with a guest speaker, Cynthia Tibbs. Cynthia, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
So I am the Tenant Association President for the West Side Urban Renewal Brownstones. There are 36 landmark status brownstones that NYCHA brought back in the 70s. They are scattered between 89th Street and 93rd from Central Park West all the way to Amsterdam. I have officially been president for 6 years, unofficially much longer. I'm born and raised Upper West Side. I've been here my entire life, never left. I am also the second vice chair to the Manhattan South District Council of Presidents. I oversee all NYCHA developments from 100th Street to the west side, all the way down to the south, very east and west. So I have a vast amount of knowledge that comes with NYCHA. Currently, NYCHA has done, I understand this meeting is about repairs, so really quickly, NYCHA has upgraded their work ticket system. There have been some hiccups along the way. It is actually working better than it was before. We now have skilled trades, which is plumbers, carpenters, electricians that are within a 20-block radius. So at any time, if there is an emergency that a tenant is experiencing, rather than waiting for skilled trades to come from Brooklyn, which takes hours on end, they are anywhere between our development, Douglas, or Amsterdam houses. So you're talking 20 blocks in either way, they can get to us a lot quicker, which speeds up the work performance than what we had going before. Again, a few hiccups, but you know, things happen. The portal has gone down because they're upgrading it. You know, we have a lot of seniors that are not tech savvy. They still have to call in, but we are getting things done in a much more productive way than before. The empty apartments that, as you saw in the newspapers, that people were complaining that have been sitting stagnant. Well, they're not stagnant up here due to the new work orders we have. We are getting the apartments turned over a lot quicker so we can put new tenants in them. With the brownstones always comes a greater need of having asbestos in the apartments as they are very old. So if they stay off the rent rolls, it is because asbestos removal needs to be done. If a tenant is currently living there, we have to put them into a vacant apartment. So we keep approximately 4 or 5 off the rent rolls for emergencies to move tenants into while their apartments are being done, rather than take them out of the neighborhood and have to put them in a hotel. We try to keep them in their neighborhood where their doctors are, where their community is, especially with the saturation of seniors at the brownstones and Forest. As far as NYCHA with RAD, PAC, now there's this new trust that's being brought in. The brownstones were selected to go into RAD in 2016. We fought against it. We got removed out of it. I will fight every single time they try to put us in, because at the end of the day, only 62,000 units can go into the RAD program, and only 25,000 right now can go into the trust. So you have to keep a certain block of NYCHA still under the Section 9 program. And even though NYCHA cries that they have no money, what they neglect to tell you guys, but we know, is that capital money that is slated for a building that goes into RAD, that capital money goes back to NYCHA. So they're not broke if they're constantly getting money back. For instance, in this area, when Wise Towers went into the RAD program, Wise was an underfunded unit. They were getting funding from NYCHA. So it made sense for them to go into it. The ball that got dropped severely with Wise Towers was that there was no resident input when RAD was done in 2019, when Wise Towers got put in at the beginning of COVID. Residents were not given chance to screen the developers, decide what they wanted to do. The developers made all the moves, which resulted in the Novella horses in the plaza being cut off at the legs and thrown in the dumpster. For those that don't know, Wise Towers is a historical site. They come with historical status. Nothing in that playground should have been destroyed, altered, or removed. The developers, PRC Management, which gave a presentation here some time ago, made it sound like they were allowed to do this. No, they weren't. And it took the TA president from Wise Towers to drag these horses with his board members out of the dumpsters, secure them in his room, and then they got the Historical Society involved. And now they've been restored and they just got put back in the playground. But it took 3 years for this to happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think just everybody, these were these beautiful abstract horses that had been there for many, many years.
They have been there
The
since the
70s.
sixties.
60s.
They have been there since the sixties.
And they were beautiful, beautiful shaped.
The Italian consulate was notified by the TA president. That's how intense it got. They sent a monitor up. Okay, but at the end of the day, and I don't mean to sound like a naggy mother, the Landmark and Preservation Committee should have been on top of that here and made sure that nothing got destroyed.
Could you explain the difference between RAD and trust for everybody?
So
RAD and the trust.
RAD, which is also known as PACT in New York, because de Blasio wanted to give it a fancy name. It means the same thing as rental assistance demonstration. It means that NYCHA owns the land. They are never going to get rid of that land because it's worth millions. NYCHA owns the land, but they bring in private developers that are able to acquire loans that come with all kind of federal subsidies that they wind up doing the construction. Because NYCHA has borrowed so much money against the banks, they're not permitted to borrow anymore. So they have to bring outside developers in. With RAD, a private developer comes in, they get the loans. For the first 2 years, they only have to pay back the 2% interest on the loan. So they get to acquire all this money to make all these changes. They will tell you, we're going to rip out the old piping. We're going to give you new piping. That has yet to happen in any RAD building. It's a cosmetic upgrade. No matter how you slice it, it's a cosmetic upgrade. They entice the tenants with these shiny little stainless steel refrigerators and stoves. But what has happened at Wise Towers, even with the new elevators that got installed, the fire department spends more time at Wise Towers than it does anywhere, because the brand new elevators keep breaking down with people trapped inside. There were 2 major compact fires over there when it first started in 2019. One that happened in building 120 and the other one that happened at building 133 West 90th, all due to negligence on the developer's part. They took the compactor doors off the compactor on the 10th floor. Somebody threw a match on the 12th floor into the compactor. It did what was referred to as a backdraft and shot out the 10th floor, and the entire floor caught on fire. People were taken out in stretchers, apartments got burned. Some of the trees on the bottom had cinders on them and caught fire. It was a natural disaster over there that could have been avoided had they done things according to fire safety protocol. But because nobody was watching what they were doing, they got away with this, again, during COVID. Since then, there has been 2 steam pipe explosions. One happened last month in building 120. People were in their living rooms and they heard what sounded like thunder. And the next thing they knew, their living room walls opened up and hot steam came exploding out and flooding their apartments. All because they never changed the pipes out to begin with. So now that this disaster has happened, which created a huge breakdown in steam over here with Con Edison. The pipe, the main steam pipe broke on 91st Street, which wound up shutting down all heat and hot water, not only to all of Wise Towers, but the Brownstones, 92nd Street, 94th Street, 93rd Street, all of us that acquired forced steam from Con Ed got affected for 2 weeks. We wound up with no hot water or heat.
Did the developer, oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Right.
Did you want to,
Oh, go ahead.
did the developer say they would be upgrading those steam pipes?
Well, now that this has happened, they're being forced to upgrade the steam pipes. It should have been done in 2019. It should have been done in the beginning of the demolition. We are now in 2023 going into 24. And now they are deciding to upgrade the steam pipes. So people who have already lost square footage in their apartments due to the new rehab work that's been done is now going to lose more square footage because due to asbestos, they can't pull the old pipes out. They're going to plug them off, and now they're going to drill new holes with new pipes, which again is going to be more aggravation on the tenants, which could have been prevented had they done this in the beginning, but God forbid they spend the money the right way.
Is there an oversight committee? Is there oversight
No,
in NYCHA?
no. And NYCHA, in the beginning, NYCHA made it very clear to the tenants, we will be watching what they're doing.
Yeah.
If you don't like what they're doing and you want to go back to NYCHA, we'll let you go back to NYCHA. That is never going to happen because too much money has changed hands between the developers and NYCHA to ever let these tenants go back to NYCHA. The only one that fights on a daily basis is Gail Brewer's office. She fights the real estate people. She fights NYCHA every single day for the tenants. Because what they have done to these tenants since the beginning is not right at all. Seniors, they should have been put in temporary apartments so that they wouldn't have to live in an apartment with dust all over the place, were not moved. There was one senior that was left in her bathroom to sit on her toilet seat with her bag of medicine while they destroyed her apartment around her. Until Gail's office got involved and had her be moved out of there. We had one tenant who lost his grandmother, is emotionally compromised, and because the workers kept harassing him, open your door, we need to come in and do work. They weren't putting notices out. They were not giving tenants 72 hours notice. This tenant got so fed up at 6 a.m. in the morning, he opened up his window and walked out for everybody to see. And he killed himself. Didn't make the papers. They swept it under the rug because there is no oversight. There's nobody watching the children as they play.
Could I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, Ethel.
Is it okay?
Oh. We may have
Can't
lost,
hear.
Ethel, hang on a sec, we may have lost their audio.
Was never in place.
Good question. Thank you.
There we go.
Is it someone else asking or should I?
Go ahead, Ethel.
Go ahead, please.
Is it okay? Okay. I want to thank you very, very much for this, for your knowledge and just your experience and your determination. At the beginning of your talk, and it's all so complicated, it seemed to me that at the beginning, at least, you did set a note of at least some progress in the new coordination and arrangements and so on. The last, what we've been hearing, I've been hearing, are really these progress, but really terrible inadequate progress, and it sounds, I hope not, that there's for the 2 steps forward, there's a lot of steps backwards. And then you put together, and you said it's Gail Brewer's work that she's been able to do it. We are the voluntary organization, but we're the ones who really should be, and always should be, the advocates, the community board, for one of the biggest population concentrations in Board 7, and that is in NYCHA. I just wonder, as you look to, I don't know, let's say the next 2 years, as so much is going, are you with your people and residents putting together perhaps some written action agenda or a coordination of pulling together these new improvements, while at the same time 1 step forward, and I hope not 2 steps backward, that we can all see and share in and advocate for with you?
So what I think you're not getting, Ethel, is that the forward steps that are happening in the brownstones is because the brownstones are still under Section 9, which is New York City Public Housing.
Right.
Everything backwards is at Wise Towers, which is a RAD development. That's the difference, which is why we don't want to go into RAD, because we are able to get all our repairs done with the capital money that NYCHA has available. For instance, starting in February, because I talk to everybody and anyone, as you know, I'm very active. We were able to secure $15 million to get our roofs done. And I don't mean a patch job. I mean brand new roofs. Every brownstone comes with a main roof and an offset roof, which is a smaller version due to fire safety codes. Starting in February, you were going to see a lot of scaffolding go up, unfortunately, in the front and back of the buildings. And even though they approved 15 million, I got another 2 million. So now it's up to 17 million. Because again, every development that gets put into RAD, that money goes back to NYCHA. NYCHA won't tell you that, but they know I know. So now it's up to 17 million. So we will be getting new roofs. It will be a 3-year project. We have to get security and safety involved because we are low buildings. We want to make sure that nobody gets robbed, nobody climbs up the scaffolding and goes through our windows and robs or assaults anyone. So there are a bunch of protocols that have to be put into place. But never let NYCHA tell you it's not possible. It is possible if you stay on them about it. Anything can be done. Do they get more money with every developer that gets put in, or every development that gets put into RAD? Absolutely. It is designed to make money. But what they don't let you know when they're telling you that all these tenants' protections are in place, they are not. Ocean Bay was the first development to go RAD. They made it sound like de Blasio was out there. Oh, it's the best thing next to sliced bread. What they have not shown you that I have pictures of is last year when a part of the roof and the facade fell off. It's a brand new building that the bricks fell off of, that all the aluminum around the top of the roof fell off. What they don't tell you is how when NYCHA is no longer responsible for housing inspections, it now falls under HUD, that when the HUD inspectors go in there, they are finding the apartments at Ocean Bay not up to code. So if a tenant loses the certificate for that apartment, they are now required to pay full market rent for that apartment. That's what NYCHA doesn't tell you. So when they say that the eviction rate at Ocean Bay is the highest there is, this is one of the reasons why that they're not telling you about. Because even though you're no longer NYCHA, NYCHA's not doing the repairs, out at Ocean Bay, Wave Crest Management is one of the most deplorable companies that was given a Section 8 status. They should never be in charge of Section 8 buildings. because they do not repair them up to code. This is a money-making job. That's all they do.
So what you're saying is, in effect, NYCHA does provide oversight. That it is a body that can be held responsible.
Yes, they can be, but are they being? No.
That's another question.
That's, if you don't have a strong council person in your district fighting for your residents, you are gonna fall to the wayside.
Okay.
Have you found that with other TA presidents that the council can be effective advocates for getting noise about things?
More or less, yeah.
I'm sorry,
Absolutely.
Miranda, could you talk a little louder?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, good.
I'm just asking if other TA presidents have found a similar experience that the council member has been their main advocate versus other representatives or making.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you have some TAs that are not strong. Unfortunately, you have some TAs where the presidents have been there for 10 years or longer. And a lot of them just get frustrated, or they don't know the channels that they can go through to get things done. So they get stuck. You have to know, you have to be 2 steps in front of NYCHA. NYCHA is always working against us. So you have to stay on top of your game. Otherwise, you're gonna get lost.
So I think that I speak for the community board, which saying that we would like to be more involved. And yes, we have.
Right.
I acknowledge that. But we would like to be more involved and what do you suggest? What can we do? And I haven't forgotten about the church.
Yes, yeah, I will bring that up.
Okay.
At some point, when the weather gets nicer, because it's too cold now, I would suggest we all do a walkthrough. A lot of you have no idea how our developments work. A lot of you don't know, we have beautiful backyards. Okay, that connect the buildings together. We have family days, we have turkey drives, I'm getting ready to give out toys. We do a lot, and a lot of you have no idea just how hard we work. Okay, because we have landmark status. CB7 was very instrumental. Hi, Max. When one of our lion heads fell off one of our buildings. And he brought somebody up from the landmark committee to help see about getting the head restored back onto the building. Because it's not easy at all. There is any building that comes with landmark status means we are precious and we should be treated with kid gloves. And if it was up to NYCHA, they would do away with us. Which brings us to our next topic. The housing committee forming with landmark committee is extremely important right now. We as tenants and as leaders are watching everything that's happening at the Presbyterian Church on 86th Street. Why? Because if they lose their landmark status and they are permitted to build a condominium or whatever, co-op, whatever they want to build up there, that sets the blueprint in place for getting rid of our brownstones. With any RAD development comes a Section 18 demolition clause, which means that if the developer feels it would cost more to repair the buildings than to tear them down and build them up, they get to do that. And that's what would happen with any of the research sites up here, especially mine. We have had landmark status since the 70s. If you take our landmark status away from us and we lose the fight against NYCHA to keep us Section 9, and they don't never let you know when they're putting you into a RAD development. They just do it at the last minute. They come up with their team and they go, we've decided you're going to be one of the 62,000. They did it to us in 2016. We fought against it. They did it last year and I threw a fit and I said, if you think I'm letting you take back my $15 million for my roofs and put us in RAD, I will call every news media outlet available in New York. So they left us alone.
How did you fight? How did you fighted, how did you make them leave you alone?
I threatened to go to the media, and they didn't know that I knew that they get to take that money back and use it. I said, that money is earmarked for us. You're not taking it back. If you take it back, I will go to the media. NYCHA hates it when I go to the media. They hate it. They hate bad publicity. And that is one way I can get them, because they know I know.
I have a question. So you mentioned that neither RAD nor the housing trust are a good way to get the repairs and renovations that you would want for the brownstones. And then you also mentioned that you were able to get funding for the roofs on a kind of a one-off basis.
Yes.
Is there some other overarching mechanism through which you think it's good to address whatever repairs and renovations are needed for the brownstones?
So the brownstones have never had cameras. Other developments have cameras, and I just told me a million times, they don't have cameras. So I went and I had a conversation with Gail Brewer, and we had a conversation with Nadler, and Nadler has committed to $700,000 to give us cameras.
Okay, so you feel that when there are things needed, you just go directly to whether it's NYCHA or Gail Brewer or
I do.
your Congress, then okay. So that and to you that is a better system than any of these overarching.
So it's a better
Rad or
system
trust.
because all our protections are in Section 9. Section 9 actually gives us the right to own our apartment should we want to. Okay, and a lot of seniors don't understand that. They've been paying rent for 40 and 50 years. At this point, they could have owned their apartment by now. But they don't realize the way the real estate game goes. They are stuck in a cycle of just constantly paying rent and not looking at the bigger picture. But all your protections are in your Section 9 HUD rules and regulations. They're called the 964 regulations. I can give you guys all copies of them. But that's where all of our protections lie. When you go into RAD, you lose half of your protections. Okay? With these section, when the building, for instance, Wise Towers, is now all Section 8. It's called project-based Section 8, which means the building is recognized as a Section 8 building. You don't get a separate voucher. It's not a housing choice Section 8 voucher that you can take and go from state to state with it. This building is recognized as Section 8. And for the first year after completion, if you do and obey all the rules, then you can ask for a mobile voucher and move to the state of your choice. Good luck finding a state that's going to take it.
Cynthia,
Because-
I just want to flag for you. You don't have to go now, but Beverly has I have a question for you at some point when you're ready.
Absolutely. But with the mobile vouchers, they are not worth the amount of money as a housing choice voucher is worth. And because this, between the immigrant crisis and everything else, there's more vouchers than there are apartments. And that's statewide, not just in New York. So good luck finding someone that's going to take a voucher. It's almost impossible. With the Preservation Trust, you don't even get a mobile voucher. Okay, it is a bond that is secured against the building. The building again becomes a Section 8 building, but the bond, the Section 8 bond stays with the unit. So if you decide you want to move, you get no bond, you get no voucher, you get nothing. You're on your own. If you get evicted, you're on your own. Okay, and the rules change. The rules are meant to force you out. It's no matter what they say, the rules are meant to get rid of you. Once you're gone, that unit goes full market value.
Is there
I
a
think Beverly.
sorry, Beverly, please go ahead.
Hi, I obviously have been reading recently about the mayor's sort of efforts around at-risk housing. and his appointment of Leela Bozorg as the new executive director for housing in City Hall. And I wondered whether you could comment on any of those new approaches which are designed to expedite the improvement of existing houses, including for NYCHA, and whether you're in the loop on any of the initiatives that are going to come through from that new position.
No, because we only deal with positions appointed for NYCHA.
Although
That's the separation, so
this position,
anything,
according to the press, has jurisdiction as well, both over NYCHA and HPD initiatives.
I'm gonna have to look into it, because they'll say one thing and then it winds up being something else. And with NYCHA, it's always been, even with the trust, it may be for the trust. The trust is brand new. The trust has a lot of little loopholes that they're still figuring out. But for Section 9, that is Lisa Boldenhire. That's the only one that has jurisdiction over us, is her. And the new chair, I think his name is Jami. I forget the last name at the moment. He just got appointed after Gregory Russ left. So he has now come in. But those are the only two that oversee NYCHA. Okay. Under HUD, Alika Ampry-Samuels is supposed to be our Region 2 director. We have yet to see her since she's been appointed. We have never seen Marcia Fudge. Marcia Fudge has made maybe 2 trips to New York City, hasn't spoken with any of us presidents, which is actually shameful that we got more communication out of Lynn Patton than we do our Democratic people. Okay, and that's extremely sad. Okay, extremely sad. Alika Ampry-Samuels came from public housing. And exactly, and the only time we hear from her is when she joins in on the monitor meetings. And right now, the federal monitor his term is up in February. He's done. They're bringing in a whole new team.
So, in terms of the community board, it'd be maybe helpful. I've only been on the board 2 years, and obviously we were if you could talk about times maybe the board has been helpful or hasn't. And I just want to say you opened my eyes to a lot of stuff, so I appreciate you coming over the years. Just that you can give us examples maybe of times they have or haven't, just so we can be.
And in all honesty, because I know people that are on all the other community boards. A long time ago, this board had a separate public housing committee task force. Unfortunately, it was not productive. That needs to be brought back. You need to have a public housing task force with all the changes that NYCHA is trying to do with us and all the underhanded goings-ons. The way the community board can help and also take some of the burden off of our council person is to have a functioning public housing board. That's what you guys need. We need to go back to that. Like I said, when the weather breaks, there needs to be a complete walkthrough so you guys can see up close what we deal with every single day.
Cynthia, I don't want to hijack the conversation, but it's Max. I just have a quick question. Are you envisioning board members? Are you envisioning maybe me and the rest of the staff? I definitely like this idea, and I'd love to think through it more. Have you thought more about that?
I think it should be a group of CB7 board members, along with some of us presidents. Yeah, you're not going to find out, and no offense, that's what's happened in the past with this board. You have made assumptions or decisions on public housing without speaking to us. And at the end of the day, nobody knows our developments better than we do. Like I said, born and raised.
So I want to speak for a minute in regard to that. We had a public housing task force like 4 or 5 years ago when Matt and NYCHA was here. It wasn't really functioning well. When Steve was the chair recently prior to COVID, we did start a online meeting where we had all the TA presidents from the area. And Louisa, you remember, because I spoke to you about this. And we had all the top executives in NYCHA on board. But unfortunately, COVID came, so it kind of just like dissipated. But at the last meeting that we had, the plan was, again, to make sure we have open dialogue and a discussion about what's going on within the NYCHA campuses and what we can do for it. So that needs to be, resurrected, and especially if we're going to merge with a land and housing committee. I think we have enough people here with a background knowledge on rules and regulations, et cetera. But NYCHA is an entity unto itself. Okay, right. And so it's very important for us to monitor what's going on. So starting out with a working group would be great. And it has to be a combination of definitely the resident leaders, because we're the ones who know basically, and the residents, what's going on. You understand? Instead of others from the outside, like I've seen people come here and do surveys, but there was no one that lived in NYCHA that was part of the survey. You understand? So I think that needs to change. And I do feel that now is the time to do that, because as Cynthia said, she is on top of everything. That's the difference. Not every leader has that skill set to do that, because it's a lot to navigate through the language in the government agency and the agency itself. And if you don't have a background in housing alone to deal with the 964 regs, they're always changing, and you may not have the time. So, it's cumbersome. So you do need to have people that can navigate through the system, but also with the working group, everybody can have input. Because things change as we go on. And like Cynthia said, you have some buildings that are in red, you have some buildings that will be impacted, you understand? And some that will be in section 9. So right there, you have 3 different tracks and different profiles that you're dealing with. So that's a lot. Okay. So that's what I'm saying that,
Quick question.
Yeah.
Sorry. So you mentioned there were some executives also on the.
We have
so
the top executives from NYCHA, but see, the thing is that when there's a new mayor, there's a new chain of command. You understand? So that changes what, 3 or 4 years, some stay, some go. Now, Victor Gonzalez, who used to be on this board, he's a vice chair within NYCHA. He's been very open as far as, helping, and I think that's another point person, Brian Mahoney, right? He's the government relations person, but again, the titles change, the duties change, the responsibilities change within the agency. You understand? We gotta stay on top of that. And Cynthia's able to do that because she has the skill set. But not all the TA presidents can do that. Okay, so that's something
But we
everybody
would
has to
want them
understand.
involved in this group.
Well, the board has to be involved, and they have to be involved as well, because this way they can sit down and say, okay, this is what's going on, et cetera. But then, anyone at this table, like, you have a background, some of you, I don't know, all of you, you can also guide that person to say, all right, this is how you should handle this. You understand what I'm saying?
And whether they have
Yeah.
the skill set or not,
Exactly.
they have been elected by their residents to run their building.
So yes,
They have to be here.
right, they have to be part of it.
Absolutely.
Oh.
Okay.
Can I just
I just
ask-
want to flag that Ethel has a question, but then we also actually have a member of the public, Leanne Valera, that has a question as well.
Mine are very, I'll take 2 seconds if it's okay. In everything you've described, please, just once again, in terms of the brownstones and all that is entailed with the brownstones, everything you've described, is it correct that everything with the brownstones are separate from all that you have described in relation to the other buildings and jurisdictions, that's in a separate place because
Yes.
of the historic development? Is that correct?
Correct.
So that as your point among many, I think it's terrific, that for the board, this board, to begin to help. One thing that you said immediately is to create a major task force that can embody the various jurisdictions that you have been outlining. For heaven's sakes, like the back of your hand, I'm writing down and thinking, whoa, we got to figure this out. And good for you, and especially to involve the residents. So this is very important for us to think through, because I'm glad about the council members' involvement, but we all need to do more and differently, so that your point about a major task force that also involves the community seems to me to be a road to go. At the same time, the brownstones had their own needs, the historic and everything else, and we got to try to do our best with that. The last thing is, one of the items tonight, I think, or whenever, is the proposition to join the land use committee and the housing committee as an entity. That may, that's okay. That may be good, but now I think we got to think a little bit, as I have learned a great deal tonight about what might be needed in the neighborhood, and it's been extremely important.
Thank you. I think we have a member of the public. Is that Leanne?
Yes, thank you, Max. Recognize me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate the entire board. Cynthia, thank you so much for your insight. Definitely learned a lot. I had a couple questions, Cynthia, about, and for the entire board, if you're, if anyone else has additional knowledge on this. Cynthia, how are Section 8 development ear tagged for RAD conversion, or what we in New York City I believe is called PACT? Do we know any other? Go ahead.
It's entirely up to NYCHA.
So, but how are they selected, and what category? Do we know the process for selecting?
There is no process.
There is.
Number one, they keep us in the dark because they don't want us to catch the jump on them. It's supposed to be, originally when de Blasio was mayor, he said that they were targeting the buildings that had the worst problems. That was untrue. They actually went after the buildings in the highest real estate area.
Mm.
Which is why the Upper West Side got hit first.
Okay.
And then
I see. It might be, I think it might be a good angle to maybe start pushing for more transparency in that process. So I think it would be easier to then, sort of point tag to the deficiencies or the flaws of the selection process. And, it'll be easier to call them.
I know you're new at this. NYCHA residents have been asking for transparency since the 1930s.
Okay. It's enough. That's before I was born. And then, Cynthia, another question, or to the entire board, is there any benefit? I know that deterioration in repairs in living standards overall is one of the, what I've read, the downside of privatization when it comes to the housing market. Are there any benefits from the tenant perspective?
You want to know what the benefits are of privatizing?
Yes.
So you get a shiny new refrigerator and stove. And if you look at the back of it, it actually has a yellow sticker that says refurbished. But it's shiny.
Okay, so it's little to no benefits for tenants.
As far as it is cosmetically cute.
Okay.
You are a senior that has lived in squalor for 10 years or more. You get enticed with these new objects. Okay, so to them, anything is better than what they've been living with. When they've been living with lead-based paint, when they've been living with asbestos, when they've been, they are so fed up that a shiny coat of paint makes them happy. But what they don't realize is that behind those walls, mold is still growing.
Okay.
That the pipes are still rusted, that they have not been changed out. That eventually, if it doesn't happen in their lifetime, it's going to happen in the next person's lifetime. The pipes are going to explode.
Okay.
And then, so
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, one thing that happens with any kind of like trust or RAD development, there's something called housing quality standards. So it's required for the developer or the trust to bring the units up to the housing quality standard before they can get any of the funding that they mentioned from, the federal and state funding.
Exactly.
That they get. So, we've all read about, there's all these big capital CapEx backlogs for NYCHA, there's the $80 billion number. So whatever's on the list of backlogs of repair to that building have to be cleared by that developer or the public trust, whichever it may be, before they can get that funding for the renovation. So I mean, it doesn't fix all the problems, but at least they have to clear the existing list of repairs and bring up to a standard before they can start the renovation, before they get the first dollar for the renovation.
Which actually is a waste of money. When they did Wise Towers, they had to bring the apartments up to code. So what did they do? They gave almost every single tenant a brand new refrigerator. It wasn't Chrome. It was a Westinghouse or a General Electric. It was white or black, but it was brand new. And then the developers came in, and here come the shiny Chrome ones. So the other ones got thrown out. They got trashed because they were now privatized. So they didn't have to give them back to NYCHA. That's a waste of money. That's money that's wasted. Okay, and that's what I'm saying. NYCHA is, when it comes to wasting money or not spending it appropriately, they are masters at it. That made absolutely no sense.
And my last question, are HUD inspections happening in the same manner that they would happen otherwise for public housing? When they go inspect, if a tenant in a RAD development reports a potential code violation or their unit might be under code, the process to report that would be the same. It will be going through HSU or HUD?
It goes to the Department of Buildings.
Okay.
And then the Department of Buildings, again, gives the information to NYCHA because NYCHA still owns the land. So it goes to the landowner.
I see.
And then NYCHA would notify the
Correct.
developer.
NYCHA notifies the developer.
Okay. And can you allow this there? Do we have
Inspections, right? Sorry, I'm sorry. I'll say it. There's also the housing quality standard inspections, right, are done by HUD, correct?
Correct.
So basically HUD comes in, they do an inspection, they say, here are the 10 things that need to be fixed in this unit. And then the developer or the trust has to come in and make those changes, and then they come in again and inspect, and that has to be, that you have to pass that inspection before it can move forward with.
That's under a RAD building.
For a RAD or
NYCHA building, under a NYCHA building, there's something called the physical needs assessment.
Yes.
So that gets done every year. And those are building inspectors, NYCHA people, and HUD inspectors that all come in, because at the end of the day, we're funded by HUD.
Yeah.
So you will get 3 types in. When the building goes RAD, then you're gonna get a HUD inspector and a private inspector for just the private developers. And then NYCHA only comes in if there's a problem. NYCHA wants little to nothing to do with these buildings once they're turned over to the private developers. They will hand you the keys, and God forbid someone has a flood in their apartment 2 hours later, and they call NYCHA's emergency contact center, it automatically highlights red. Oh no, you're not us anymore, call someone else, and they hang up on you. They literally wash their hands the minute the keys are turned over.
I see you have another hand from Beverly as well, when you have a chance.
I think that the repairs, you mentioned the kind of pilot program, the
Mhm.
west side, was that done through NYCHA? Was
Yes.
that- Okay, and is there plans to expand it or?
Oh, it's been expanded. It started off in Brooklyn first. Manhattan was the last to get it. They went to Brooklyn first, and it worked good there. And then it went to Queens, and then it went to the Bronx, it came to Manhattan last.
And if they're in RAD?
No, only NYCHA buildings,
Right.
only NYCHA buildings now have this new work order system. If you are, and that's the bad part, if you are in a RAD building and you need a repair done during the conversion or after the conversion, whatever it may be, you have to go through your new management company, which, mind you, again, Wise Towers, their management office was open from 9 to 12 every day, 3 hours. You go, you knock on their door, they wouldn't even buzz you in. You call, you get a recording telling you to leave a message, someone gets back to you, no one gets back to you. So you wind up spending your whole day calling 311.
The whole week.
Whatever, until an inspector comes up, this is what they do.
Right.
But under NYCHA, their office is open. You can go to the management office from 8:30 to 4, Monday through Friday, and complain. You cannot do that with a RAD building.
Until you said they pass those keys on.
Huh? Exactly. Once the keys are passed off, you're doomed. You are doomed.
And NYCHA tracks its work projects like online, you can check it to
The NYCHA projects are tracked online. As soon as you're RAD, you can't track anything. It is taken off the tracker, which is another reason they'll say, oh, NYCHA's doing great with repairs. Oh, well, in essence, now that the new work order system is in place, repairs are being done a lot swifter. But you don't know how many because your RAD developments are taken off. So they'll come on and say, oh, we've gotten our numbers down to such and such percentage. No, you transferred all those buildings into RAD, so they are no longer your problem. That's how it looks like they're doing such a great job.
I recently read about the votes that are happening.
No strict.
Right, will that be happening citywide?
So again, just like RAD, the Nostrand houses was the first development. Nostrand houses was the first development to go under the Preservation Trust. They were not part of the 62,000 that de Blasio wanted to put into RAD. So in order for them to do the trust, there was a 100-day voting process where they all had to be, there were meetings, there was door knocking done, everything. So the voting happened Friday. 421 voted for the trust, 216 voted for RAD, 214 voted to stay Section 9. So as of right now, they are unofficially going into the trust. Now, that just means that the voting was done. Now, the mayor and the governor have to take this to the banks because, again, these are bonds. They're going to be held against that development. But now they have decided that Bronx Addition, which is a senior development in the Bronx that was so badly in need of repairs, half of the seniors had to be moved out of the building and have been temporarily relocated everywhere. So if you want to go back home, now that's the next one that's going to go through the 100-day soliciting, before they vote. But again, they can only put 25,000 units in the trust. It's not, if NYCHA had their way, they would probably privatize the entire portfolio. Unfortunately, they can't. They have to, it was set up by the Southern District of New York to be done in increments. The best thing that happened to NYCHA residents was when Judge Pauly of the Southern District of New York was in charge of us, because he held NYCHA accountable for everything. Unfortunately, he passed away last year. So now they are gonna do their best to steamroll with the trust. But with the trust, you do not get a private management company. NYCHA still manages, but the units will go under project-based Section 8. Difference being, you will never get a mobile voucher. Never, ever. If you leave NYCHA, you leave on your own.
But you were saying the mobile vouchers really don't work.
No, they don't. They don't. But at least that is an option. For instance, if you have a whole bunch of family down in Virginia and you're able to find a private management company that accepts a HUD mobile voucher. It's rare, but it's not impossible. If you were to find a management company that would take your mobile voucher, then you could say, you know what, I'm gonna take my mobile voucher. It may not be for the full amount of the rent, but enough of the rent that I can pay the rest, and I'll be closer with my family. Under the trust, you do not have that option at all.
Okay, so what are the benefits of the trust versus the problems with the trust?
The benefit of
Aside from the mobile.
so according to NYCHA, the benefit of the trust is that if you have a management team that is doing a great job, that you have good communication with, that is making repairs in your development, then that management team still stays on under the trust. They are NYCHA employees. Under RAD, NYCHA employees are forced to move out of that development. When Wise Towers went RAD, every NYCHA employee had to pick another development to go to because they were being relocated out of Wise Towers. You cannot stay. Under the trust, you would still be able to work at that development.
And what if we don't have good staff?
Then you can request that staff be changed.
Okay.
And you're gonna get another NYCHA group.
Okay, so
It's a way for NYCHA employees to have job security also. They still stay within the developments. They are not, downsized. They are not let go. They are not transferred. They still stay a part of it. That's the difference.
So without Judge Paul, is there an advocate in the court? I guess
There is another advocate, but he was our hero.
I know, I know he really was
Yeah.
a champion. But do you feel there is someone in the courts looking at a nice resident?
They're supposed to
Public
be.
housing
We have
residents.
yet to have a sit down with this person any more than we have with her.
Time will tell, and also not a
Exactly.
major
Right.
case yet. Yeah, probably something else.
Excuse me a moment, may I speak?
Yes,
Um,
yes, go ahead.
Yeah, first, Cynthia, thank you very much for the presentation you've given, focused really on your own experience with the Section 9 NYCHA facilities. I think just addressing the committee as a whole, before we make a decision about a way to proceed to become more deeply engaged with NYCHA and all of the affordable housing they represent in our district, we should bring in other tenant leaders who represent perhaps some projects that are in different programs, so we can hear their perspectives as well. Because I think that would be a very important way of getting a fuller picture of how tenants across NYCHA within our district feel. So I would just urge that we take the time to schedule that for some of the other tenant leaders that we know and can connect with. Thanks. And I do have to leave, so I wanted to say that.
And
On another side note, Carmen Quinones in Douglas Houses is doing resident management. Okay, she has already been in talks with NYCHA and HUD, because one of the things that the 964 regulations allows NYCHA tenants to do is manage their own development. And you don't even have to manage the entire development. You can pick a part that you want to be in charge of. But what that does is stop the privatization from coming in. So if she actually succeeds, she is doing it. She will be the first development that will go under resident management.
Yeah, we should bring her in.
Absolutely.
For the Wise Towers.
Mhm.
Someone involved in development.
Yeah.
As Beverly said, before we move forward with the decision.
You have the Dome site on 84th Street, which also sits on NYCHA property, but is managed by Kraus. And they are having issues over there with their private management. That was before RAD was done. It came in, I think, on the NextGen or something.
setting up another hand as well from Roberta when you have a chance.
We'll get them also.
Thanks so much, Beverly. I think it's so important to hear from, we have some wonderful developments. I think we should hear from Amsterdam Houses, Amsterdam Additions, the TA president from Wise Towers, and Ethel and many people on this call have been involved with the task force for NYCHA. It's a very tricky and complicated issue. And I think we need to have a lot of people come before the board and talk about some of the various ways that we can really be helpful. It is 6,000 units of affordable housing, and we definitely want to maintain them. And Ethel, I know you were involved for many, many years. So anyway, thank you so much.
Any other questions?
The vote already happened. The vote ended, there is no vote in Manhattan. Nostrum was the first. The vote ended on Friday.
Right.
So those are the tally. The next one will be in the Bronx. It'll be Bronx edition. Again, NYCHA only tells us at the last minute, but because it's brand new, they have to move slower. So Bronx edition will be the next development that will take a vote.
Is there any process by which the tenants themselves can say, let's have a vote, or let's say, say, we don't want red, let's schedule a vote and express that, we would not like to move forward this way?
You can, I don't know how much NYCHA listens. NYCHA has always had like a thing where they present it to the TA president first. Sometimes it works in their favor, sometimes it doesn't. Currently, without, saying names, there is a development within MCB7 that is going through turmoil because the president took it upon herself to start discussions with NYCHA because she wanted a new kitchen without talking to her residents. And they are furious, and now they are all revolting against her. So, it's always good. Our job as presidents is we're supposed to be an information highway. We're supposed to bring all the options to you and then let the residents come up with a concise of what they think would work for them. And then the majority rules. We should never take it upon ourselves to decide for everybody what should happen. When they came to us in 2016, the room was, we had a fit when we found out we were being put into it, and we all pushed back. I can't do this by myself. I couldn't do it without my tenants, standing behind me. And once they knew that there was money we could acquire to get our repairs without being privatized, they were all for it. Can that change at any given moment? Absolutely. Is it changing right now? No. A lot of people are scared. A lot of people have seen. We've watched what's happened at Wise. We've seen what they did to the horses. We've seen the fire department there every single day. Okay, we've seen the drama. So when you have seniors that just want to live a quiet life, and you have people that just want to go to work and come home and not deal with the stress of demolition in their apartments, they may choose another option. But our job as presidents is first and foremost to give you all the information that we have available so that decisions can be made on facts, not rumors of people sitting on the bench gossiping. This is not a sewing circle, facts. Yes.
I like the bench, but it's not always accurate.
Exactly.
Are there any other questions?
Okay, so how about you going to be in Florida?
I'll be back this weekend. I'll be back Sunday. We will be giving out toys on the 21st. I'll be back on Sunday.
Terrific. Okay. So we'll be in touch. We have to talk to a lot of people, but sure. I think we are talking about, you know, a natural working group.
Yes,
Very
absolutely.
informative.
Be important to put it together again.
Absolutely. I need to know. Anytime after Sunday.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cindy, for coming. It was very informative and we'll definitely be in touch.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for this.
No, that will affect.
No, we're gonna talk about the amalgamation.
And Louisa, I have the responses if you want from the poll that I sent out, although they're not helpful at all. But to be honest, it's I don't have it in front of me, but I looked just before the meeting. It's 37.5 to 37.5, with the remainder being the like 4 different times I tested the poll myself.
Okay, what that is about is that if we are amalgamating, again, we are. And first of all, in case anyone had any worries about this, almost all the community boards in Manhattan are combined as land use, zoning, and housing. They're all under one tent, and it really makes sense. So that's really good. But we now get down to the mundane. We meet either on housing, it meets on the second Monday, and land use meets on the third Wednesday. And what Max is talking about is what are people's preferences? Now, a lot of people who are on housing are also on land use, so we've been doing both.
I
But
believe
we're now-
Beverly's already started reaching out to a handful of those of you that are on both. Maybe she hasn't gotten to everyone yet, but I did see she started reaching out to you on that about picking a new committee.
Okay, and there's also the issue and that everybody is supposed to be on 2 committees. If your committees were land use and housing, you are now on 1 committee. So, you should be looking around also for a second committee that you might be interested in. But we come back to when do we meet? I know that it's kind of very kind of bottom of the list, not really important, but it is. A number of people have thought that if we meet on the second Monday, it gives us time to do resolutions. For medical appointments. I like that one. Whatever, Richard, who will be the head of the committee, has pointed out that he has a number of meetings on Mondays. Mondays are hard. And that is difficult, so I can go either way. Holly?
I prefer Monday for me because I have other commitments, so I like the Monday for me. It's Monday. I prefer Wednesday for the same reason. Mondays are very busy for me, but you know, I'm one of many, so I'll do what the group needs to do. I find
Jami is leaning toward Monday, but it's
no,
not.
I'm leaning toward I prefer Wednesday.
Right. But you'll take Monday.
I mean, Monday's hard. Monday's hard.
I'm putting it
Like
for Wednesday.
like Richard, I have other meetings on
Right.
it, so there's always a conflict.
Okay, Corey?
I'm not yet on the committee, so I said.
This may be the deciding factor. Ira?
I prefer Monday because otherwise I've got education, the following one, so back to back.
You
I
asking,
prefer I like the
going around
library.
the table?
That too,
Yeah,
that's a big.
yeah.
Are you going around the table or?
Yes.
Yeah. Go
We're
ahead.
now up to you.
Thanks. I think I would prefer Monday if possible. But by the way, if we take some of the discussion tonight, there may be a change and an expansion of the housing component and task forces and so on. But that remains to be seen. So in terms of the question, Monday seems to be okay to me.
Okay, and I think if we're talking about public housing working group, that is either a subcommittee or a committee by itself. I'm not sure quite how the rules work on that. Howard, are you with us?
Howard
This
says
picture is,
Maybe he stepped away for a moment. We can circle back. I can also send the poll out again. Frankly, I was going to, because we didn't have everyone take it, and I wanted to send it out before the land use committee as well. So I can resend that, and maybe everyone can like re-put their preferences there, and then I can readdress this at land use too.
okay.
And I was just wondering, I mean, this sounds like a fait accompli and it should not. How do people feel about joining them? Let me just, what are the real reasons, aside from the fact that very often the issues overlap, is that we're not getting many ULIP applications for housing anymore. What's coming in is as of right. They do not come before the community boards. We have no input on them. I mean, this is all unfortunate, but it is what's going on right now. The city of Yes, the mayor's new proposal, it deals with housing, it deals with many other things. So it comes in under land use. Housing is a part of it. So it seems to just be a very practical thing to go and do it. But I was wondering how people felt about it.
I think it's good, and like I said earlier, you have more people that have more background knowledge in different areas as well, doing regulations, not just one asset. We have so many different types of housing, as SROs in the community, not only public housing, we have, like you said, as a right building, a lot of condominiums from the Delaware, so there's like a mix across the board. I think that it makes sense. So just having to respect for it. Yes. And with the city, promising to find, I don't know how, zoning, more affordable housing, and maybe transferring some of the commercial buildings into apartments. So there's a lot coming down the pipe right now.
Miranda? Yeah, I'm a little confused how it happened. I just got an email from Richard the day before the full board meeting saying that it's happening. So that was a little confusing, and I guess I'm a little worried that, like, I think it was our last meeting 2 months ago. We spent like 2 hours talking about this indoor cafe and where the chairs would go, and like I don't know how that reconciles with the time commitment with this meeting as well, right? Like tonight was a really good use of time. Like I'm really glad we did it, and I don't know how we would reconcile like when there are land use items before the committee, they do take a long time. Right, and then there have been months when we cancel the meetings, so there's nothing, and so I understand it from that perspective, but I don't know how we reconcile it with when there is, work before the committee. It goes on, like it's not insignificant stuff.
It's a general problem with the community board. We have a number of people who are more concerned with colons and semicolons.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's not really what I'm referring to. Like, I think it was a fair use of the time. I just don't, but it doesn't happen every week or every month, and I understand that. But for the months when it will happen, I don't want either one to be cut short. So that's why I understand, of course, there's overlap, but there's overlap between everything, right? You could say there's overlap between PCI and land use. You could say there's overlap between YEL and, preservation. You can go in a lot of different directions.
By the time.
Yeah.
It's like preservation very often has 4 or 5 different buildings or different sites that they have to consider. They divide the time.
Can I just add to this?
Ethel?
Yeah, is that okay? Thanks. The change, if I may suggest, and as this is not only contemplated, but it seems that it will be implemented, the merger. One of the trends, at least that I have observed in the last years, is that Board 7 relatively has begun to have fewer large land use projects coming before it for many, many years until probably the recent, maybe the last 5. There was never a time when there wasn't major developments in land use and new zoning and so on. So that has been changed in Board 7. If you look at what kinds of developments are coming through in comparison to the last year's. However, as I think we've begun to see, and now tonight with this particular discussion, there are new zoning proposals like the one that we're going to be dealing with, like the zoning for yes, and new zoning that is going to encompass, for example, or might, I mean, I personally have questions about it, to have more commercial use in residential buildings, even not just at the ground floor, but changing the zoning and permitting more commercial uses in residential apartments, even among other things. So that kind of thing, and the new proposals that the city planning is going to try to pass in the next, I think it's a very few months, does indicate that there's a way now in which we have to be looking at housing, affordable housing, and a number of other uses together, because it's going to be changed, and the definition of affordable is going to change for good or ill.
And this is all going to be discussed in land use and housing, but that is particularly a land use issue, particularly because they're rezoning the different uses in the city and what can be allowed where, which is what zoning is. So.
A lot of it is maybe not the best thing for Board 7 that the city is going forward with, but that remains to be seen.
We'll discuss it again. We've been discussing it already.
Yeah.
So,
Louisa, I see you actually have a hand from Peter Arnston, the outgoing executive director of the Columbus Amsterdam bid. I'll promote him.
okay.
He's joining. Give it a sec.
No. Oh, there he is.
Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks very much. The reason I raised my hand was regarding NYCHA. I came into the meeting late, and I apologize, but I was in physical therapy. The previous working group had a really good discussion with a couple of different NYCHA developments on the maintenance staff, or the staff that was doing upkeep. And I really felt that that was one of the best sessions that was held by that prior working group. And I would highly recommend that that be something to be looked at, because it made a huge difference in people's lives, the residents' lives. And just so I'm just bringing that up as a topic for the future. I would love to hear more about it, because NYCHA has been problematic for us to try and work with for decades.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
Good point.
So my only two thoughts are, I am a little concerned about process, how we got here. I mean, I'm fine with combining committees or eliminating public safety or whatever it is we're gonna do. But it would be, getting back to your question, interesting to know how we get to one decision or another. I do think that a larger committee we'll be able to take on some of what we're talking about, working groups and such. And even if we do lose a member or two with the folding in and people joining other committees, I think we'll have more people and we can do more. So I'm in favor of it generally. I'm a little curious about how some of the decisions were made. I voiced the same concern about the
It's been
elimination of public
talked
safety.
about for a long time. I know that when I first came on the board in 2015, I raised it because it seemed to me there was so much overlap. And I knew about other community boards. I think that it's happened actually because there is so little, as Ethel says, we used to have ULIPs every single month.
Yes, no, I know.
There was so much that we were doing. It's not happening now, or it's not being directed toward the community. So in some ways, it's an administrative. The way it works is that it will go before the steering committee. The steering committee has the right to add committees and take away. And so that will be done. They asked us how we felt about it, the chairs, and we all said that we thought it was a good idea.
Those originated from the board chair. It comes from the chair and the executive committee, the committee chairs, is that how the process happened?
I can jump in. Yeah, that's because I was sitting in on a couple of, not all, but a couple of those discussions. It had been something that had been talked about also when I got here, and then for some reason or another, maybe we were straightening out some other messes at the time or focusing on other priorities rather. It just kind of got put on the back burner, and then it kind of came up again. And I guess now seems like the right time. I'm kind of paraphrasing the executive committee. Those aren't my words.
So just to clarify, it comes from the executive committee and then the chairs, and then it comes to the full board, that's for the.
Right, the steering committee, because you need, but actually that's a good point, Miranda. As a reminder, like everyone here could join the steering committee and vote. I think that's how that works. I can send a note out and confirm later on, but I think all of you could join steering and vote at that time as well on this.
That's right, Max, because when the public safety vote happened, I went to the steering meeting.
So the
Yeah.
steering committee meeting that's on the 19th, we can vote, is when the vote will happen for the merger or not?
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be at
As I
6:50 on the
As
19th.
I recall, I was able to vote as a non-member of the steering committee, or whatever that's word.
And is that tallied like a committee where it's like committee members, non-committee members?
I think so, actually. And I think also Beverly or someone will offer a much more substantive explanation. It's been explained to me a few times, but I've been juggling so many things. I literally can't keep track of everything right now. But I think there's going to be like an actual presentation that explains the steps in the process. I'll confirm, but I think so.
No, I'm just understanding how it got to this level, right? So it comes from the steering committee, they check in with the board chairs, and then the steering committee votes. Is that how the process works?
Correct. Right. Like the executive committee, and then Beverly acted as like the liaison from the executive committee, meeting with Louisa and Richard and Tibita, and then now it'll go to steering committee.
We have an understanding as to how we ended up having separate land use committee and housing committee, since that seems to be a different way of doing it than many of the other community boards.
I have known it was like this before. I did, Ethel, do you know? I'm looking for established.
And there are
Member.
different city agencies, right? Like it's not.
Ethel, do you know how we were separated out housing and land use?
Well, to the extent, in my long history, coming on to the board, there was a huge emphasis on land use because it was a time, it's so long ago, of many developments such as, and changes among them. For example, the selling of so much of the rail yards and the land along the Hudson River by the Penn Central Railroad, which gave rise to Lincoln West, huge land use development, which then impacted. I'm now losing it. The housing that everyone was living in the 60s, 70s, and so there were many, one after the other, which I could list for you, of huge land use projects, and Board 7 was the focus, and in many ways, and for new zoning. And so there was a lot to do. I mean, there was a lot of work, and it took a long time, and many community groups were involved for a very long time. The NYCHA and the housing, I think, did take a backseat incorrectly, because for all the reasons that you can think of in some ways being ignored or maybe not understood, and that was bad. There was a time, however, when there was more of an emphasis, or seemed to be, on NYCHA when a task force was established. I think that Shelley was on it, and I think I was asked to be on it, and we were enthusiastic, but then for other reasons, we were actually thrown off. And I think that the NYCHA and the housing was getting unnecessary short shrift. Now, I think we could discuss this more, maybe in a smaller group, and of the very good people in the room who are newer to the board, but are smart and have better perspectives. I mean, I think we should do some of that. That would be very good, I think, to really look at, because the language now, as you know, from the administration and from the state, is all, the big thing we all have to do is affordable housing. And that's true, but it goes together with a whole bunch of other changes in the district, and in fact in the city. So I don't want to go on about it, but it was very much, there was so much land use, there was so many projects that went on for years, and very hard. I mean, Board 7 also, I should lastly say, was the focus of new zoning that other districts in Manhattan and elsewhere used as a model. If I may just say to you, I can remember myself getting a phone call from the chairs on the Upper East Side, of which I have to tell you, the Upper West Side, we felt very different from them. And they came and asked me, listen, you guys just have done new zoning. I mean, we did the whole R10A, we changed enormous things, and they asked to look at what Board 7 was doing. And in fact, they began to move in similar directions. And I can cite many examples in which Board 7 was doing a lot of land use because of the value of the land, the changes. And then in some ways, I think some of the models that we were able to show, and other boards and other communities did work with us. So yeah. That's some of the reasons. It's pretty good, but now we've got other challenges, and I think this could be a real opportunity. I'm a little concerned because there's so much with NYCHA and everything that we heard today, that because we got to understand it and know what it is. I mean, lastly, really, you know, the Regional Plan Association in the last 2 years or 3 came to this board, I think, and has been publishing studies, and used Board 7 of how to change the way we focus and zone the existing NYCHA housing. And they were coming to us. I mean, nobody picked up on it. I'm not sure how we felt, but it came from heavens. The Regional Plan Association said, you better concentrate on the NYCHA housing, although they were saying use the land differently, fill in, rezone more housing to the current. I'm sorry.
No, thank you very much. Yeah, the main thing is that there was a lot of development. Thank you. There was a lot of development in the 50s and 60s mainly. And we are now left with very few development sites unless they actually go in and tear down existing buildings like they're doing at 84th and Broadway. And that was a 7-story build, 8-story, I think. And they tore it down. There's a new building that's going up there.
There are a number of others.
Sorry?
There's several others that are in that.
And there are others that when I pass every day. But the thing is, they're as of right. And we could discuss as of right, and maybe we could propose things, but again, this is a problem. But land use, zoning, housing, they all interact. And that's why it was thought that putting this together and then seeing what comes before us and what we can move forward and be proactive about.
And the vision.
In addition, and one of them is, I think, putting together a public housing committee. Also, by the way, different community boards, they change their committees at various times, depending upon the needs.
Oh, as the city changes, so should the community.
Absolutely. I mean, community board 4 had warehouses, and then all of a sudden it has Hudson Yards.
Right.
So they changed their needs changed. Okay, does
How many-
anyone have anything else?
How many
Miranda,
members?
sorry.
One more hand from Peter online.
Okay,
How many members will we have when we join?
how many members of the steering committee?
No. When we join the 2 committees, how many people are we looking at?
I
Will
believe-
they fit
Gonna count?
I believe everyone that's like you're not going to get bumped if you know.
I'm not
I'm not-
getting, but I'm curious if we're gonna fit at this table or if it's gonna be
Oh,
somewhere else.
that would be the concern. I mean, maybe it would be a little bit more. I don't think that's fully fleshed out yet, but the one thing that I was able to say is that no one's going to get bumped, but like off. But otherwise, I'm not sure.
Wednesday. No, I don't. Yeah, no, I just wanna make sure it's not, how many people?
We could always bring in bridge tables.
We'll just have to reposition the cameras. Because we used to have a row of seats against the wall.
I know. I couldn't figure out. Okay, does anyone have anything else they would like to say? Motion to end the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, you
Actually-
still have that one hand from Peter. Actually, he's
I just,
Okay, go ahead, Peter.
I wanted to add on to what Ethel had said because she was involved back in the, I believe in the 80s, if I remember right, with 80s, yes, with the SROs. Housing was very, very active due to the conversion of SROs and the attack that was being done on them by certain developers to convert them and boot out people that were in them. And that was housing was actually very active at that time. There was also a number of community development organizations that got built up and became strong during that time, or before then. Groups like Manhattan Valley Development Corporation and WisFish. And so housing had a whole different focus, and NYCHA at the time was not a major topic, unfortunately, because back then it was probably a time that could have had something done about it. It's become much more difficult over the past 10 to 15 years. In any case, I just wanted to put that in that housing was a very important committee throughout those years. Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Everybody?
Second. Okay.